Many years ago, I was at Tanglewood, which is a place in Massachusetts, where the Boston Symphony Orchestra and other orchestras come to play in the summer. And it's out in the open. And because it's out in the open and you can sit sort of a little far away from where the orchestra is, it's cheap, it's affordable. So one day we went to listen to a program that was mostly because it was the right date, but it happened to be a program that I loved. My father loved to play the piano, and he was a special lover of Beethoven, so I grew up with all of Beethoven's piano concertos, and I really learned to love them. So we were at Tanglewood, and you can picnic while you're listening to the music. It's very informal. And so the orchestra started to play, and the pianist started to play. And at some point, we could feel that something was happening, that it wasn't, that there was some like freedom and unfettered movement of what I would name as divine happening in the playing of the music. And everyone got quiet. Everyone stopped eating. And we all acknowledged we were like in this moment, being blessed by this incredible pianist and what he was playing. And at the end, even the conductor threw his baton down on the ground and went to hug him. We recognized that in that listening. It was the Emperor Concerto. In that listening, everyone, even though we didn't know each other, we all came together. We came together in this communion of this mystical, transcendent playing and music and the beauty of it. This is what Mingyur Rinpoche in his words says about his awakening experience. As a drop of water placed in the ocean becomes indistinct, boundless, unrecognizable, and yet still exists, so my mind merged with space. It was no longer a matter of me seeing trees, or in our case, us listening to music. It was as though I had become trees. Me and trees were one. Trees were not the object of awareness. They manifested awareness. Stars were not the object of appreciation, but appreciation itself. No separate me loved the world. The world was love. Am I speaking loud enough? Yeah? I can't see. Yeah, you all being able to hear? Oh, good. The world was love, my perfect home, vast and intimate. Every particle was alive with love, fluid, flowing, without barriers. This is what the Buddha said about this boundlessness, non-separateness. It is the unfashioned, the end of all that is suffering, the true, the beyond, the subtle, the very hard to see, the ageless, the undecaying, featureless peace, the exquisite bliss, solace, the exhaustion of wanting and craving, the wonderful, the marvelous, the secure security, nirvana, the unafflicted, without being driven, the pure release, non-attachment, the island, shelter, harbor, and refuge, the ultimate. One of my teachers, Sokni Rinpoche, says about this, it's like a camera, and, well, like the shutter in the camera where you can open it or close it. Is that what you call it? Whatever. What is it? Aperture. You can open it and close it. And every now and again, for every one of us, there are moments when that aperture opens a little bit. For some of us, it could be like that moment in hearing some music that just touched a whole community of us and opened us up into non-separation. It could be in our practice. It could just be a moment of listening to a child's laughter or a bird's song like Francis of Assisi. It could be standing in the window, just overwhelmed with suffering as Eckhart Tolle was, and in some moment of recognition, that aperture opens. There are many conditions where for each of us our aperture has opened a little, and that great refuge, that communion, that profound communion of truth and love has this aperture and comes out, and we get a taste of it. And often we get a taste of it and keep it conceived as a separate experience, right? Like, oh, this happened. And we somehow think of it as a happening. But it isn't just a happening. It is an expression of something much vaster than that, which is this capacity to experience this ultimate refuge, bliss, safety, communion, that there is no separation. It is that we are indivisible, as Mingyur Rinpoche said, and that in our languaging and sometimes in our framing, we forget that. We forget that what makes us inherently beautiful, no matter how imperfect our personalities are, what is inherent in us as divine beings is this capacity, and that we have already experienced it, but forget to name it that way, forget to acknowledge it as part of our heritage that is living and alive and can be supported. And this path and what we're doing rests on this acknowledgement. It's not like the practice of mindfulness or that question even of what am I doing is separate from this reality that all the great teachers for thousands of years have handed down to us. This is what they are wanting us to open up to and acknowledge as the most important of our heritages. This capacity of our aperture to open all the way. And what's so brilliant about these teachings, like compared to some other spiritual teachings that I have received, like Advaita teachings, for example, where they talk about this, but then the rest is left up to you, like, well, so now what do I do? It's like, is there something I do? Is there not? Like, what, what's so amazing about this invitation to us is that the Buddha gave us a really enunciated path to embody, to create the conditions for this opening of our aperture. And he himself was extraordinarily specific after his own aperture opening. He didn't just like open and, well, of course, there's a story where it was like, I'm not going to teach, but I can't believe that. I think someone made it up. Because when you're that open, that just flows. But anyway, just to say, after his opening, he came across, some of you know this, 5 of his friends who he had gone through practicing all these different practices because they didn't know how to support this opening. So they starved themselves. They whipped themselves. They went around in rags. And I mean, they were like, well, how do you get there? Oh, we should starve ourselves. He starved himself until it said in the suttas that when he touched his stomach, he could feel his spine. That's how much he starved himself. He was close to death right before a woman came with something, a milk and rice dish, and offered it to him. So he like us, we've done our own thing. It might have been the bars for us or some other place where we went to an extreme, right? Because we also, like him, were like, okay, so even if I didn't name it as an opening of the aperture, even if I didn't have a language, I knew there was something I was searching for. I just didn't know what. So I did, at least in my generation, going to bars, picking people up, drinking a lot, running away from home, living on the streets. I was like searching. And it was clear, as it was to him, that none of these things were really meeting what I didn't even know I wanted, but I knew there was something. I just didn't have a language for it. So he was on the same kind of search, and he opened, and then he went to these 5 friends that he'd been on the search with, and he gave this incredible teaching. Because it was so detailed, and that this teaching wasn't based on your class and on accessibility and on ableism or on gender. It was a teaching that was accessible to every human being. You didn't have to buy it. And this is what it said, but I'm not going to do it in the way that it is taught, because the way it's taught doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to mix it around a little bit. So it's called the 4 Noble Truths. And the 3rd truth is what I've just read, which is that the capacity for the aperture to open, for each of us is there. That freedom from all suffering and constraints is possible. That this freedom isn't just a freedom that is individual. It is a freedom for all our communities. That's the third noble truth, and that's our starting ground. Because we are being asked not to go to some intellectual and conceptual doubt about it. Not to even take the particular words I'm saying, well, I don't know about what's that ultimate security, but to use it as a path to the place inside of us that knows below concept, below all the teaching we've had from everywhere, that knows, because that knowing is part of our makeup. That freedom is possible. It's an intuition. And it brought us here, and it brought us to the places even before here, when we didn't even know what this was about, this freedom. As a practice, but we knew it. And we know it in our political movements and in our queer movements. We know that knowing of freedom as a possibility. That's the third noble truth. Noble because it is true. Noble because we are noble truths. We are this noble truth of the end of suffering, of freedom. And then what's brilliant about it is that he didn't just say, okay, goodbye, that's it. He said, what stops this from taking place? What are the effluents? What are the obstacles? What are the hindrances to this happening? And very specific, and that was the second noble truth. He said, this is what the obstruction is. It is craving, clinging, desire, wanting, obsession, those energies, or their opposite, aversion, hatred, fear, anger, revenge, jealousy, confusion, sloth, torpor, doubt, anxiety. These are the energies that close the aperture. It doesn't mean we're bad when these arise. It means these are the energies that close the aperture. And that every human being has them. In his enlightenment experience, it is said he could discern, understand, see in the sense of understanding everything that is to be known in the world. He could discern that with his mind. That's what a Buddha can do. And that meant seeing through eons of the evolving of the universes. Because this, according to the Buddha, is, I'm going on a side path, come back. And what the Buddha saw is that every human being is born with these energies, as well as the beautiful energies, faith, mindfulness, generosity, renunciation, the sense of ethical living, truthfulness, loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, determination, right effort, concentration, and investigation, inquiry, of course, mindfulness, awareness, presence, companionship, bearing witness that we, each human being, has both of these capacities. And that some of these energies obstruct the opening and other energies support them. And that our work is to develop the capacity to discern what's happening and whether what's happening in our minds, in our speech, in our behavior, in our thoughts are supporting the opening or supporting the obstruction. That is where our agency lies, that capacity. Why do we slog at noticing the in-breath and the out-breath and the lifting, stepping, shifting, and eating, swallowing, or whatever, hand on the door, whatever it is, like it seems so prosaic? Why the hell am I doing this? Because that capacity to know our experience tells us whether what's happening is supportive of our well-being or oppressing our well-being. This culture, dominant culture, not our culture, dominant culture, supports in many times and ways the obstructions, and we have named that on this retreat. It supports and creates the conditions for hatred, craving, clinging, revenge, jealousy, depression, hopelessness. We know that already. And we are determined to support and create a culture in the bumbling ways we do it, because we're all learning and we're all making mistakes. And we named that in our group sharing today. Did we today or the other day? But we named it that we're bumbling and making mistakes of, we named it in sharing a home together, that we want to learn how to support and create the conditions for ourselves and each other for those beautiful energies to grow. That's our task. So every energy that is not supportive of this opening and well-being has a root. They all have the same root, and the same root is ignorance. It is a quality of mind that always comes with 3 other mental energies or energies. Do you know them? Some of you have heard this Dharma talk. Well, this is a new version of an old Dharma talk, but anyway. So what are they? Anyone remember what they are? Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I'm just teasing you. I don't want to put you on the spot. Okay. Jade. Yes, but with ignorance, which as the root, there are 3 others. It's not those 3 there. But they are the branches. They are always the branches. So yes, you're right there. The part of the root is an restlessness or anxiety, a combination of restlessness and anxiety. So because when the mind can't settle and drop, it's impossible to discern reality and what's going on, because it's always like this, ruffled up, like a wind over the water, it's ruffled up. So restlessness in the form of anxiety, shamelessness, as in we are not scared to shame ourselves and others. And then the other one is, I've forgotten the name of it, the Pali name of it, we are not scared to harm ourselves or others. So ignorance is the incapacity to discern the truth. It is a confusion of the mind, and when it's present, it obscures reality, like walking in a fog and not being able to see ahead of you, with not being scared to harm and not being able to settle in, always being agitated. So these four work together all the time. The psychological experience of these energies is that we don't feel at home. We don't feel we belong. We feel inadequate and insufficient, like in a very deep-rooted way. We feel like we are isolated, or that we're separate, or that even though we have lots of friends and we have a family and whatever it is, that somewhere we are alone. That's the psychological experience of ignorance with these other energies. Then it makes sense when ignorance is present. We are moved to what is most accessible to try to root and anchor, and that is pleasant experiences. We are moved, and it's like, moved is the right word. Like even in a moment of someone will be like, oh, that person looks, that's so gorgeous. Oh my God. Hi, can I introduce myself? Like the whole movement of the body. Hi, and we've lost a center. We've lost a sense of connection, which is what desire, craving, greed does. And we're immediately, it's like we're driven by the energy, and we become narrow focused and caught in trying to fill that insufficiency. And so addiction is not like a personal failing. It isn't. It is the natural outcome of these energies and how they work inside of us. Just to say, no blame, no judgment, no shame. This is how we're constituted. And in the three personality types, we either particularly greedy, aversive, or deluded. So for those of us who are greedy, we are moved always to the pleasant to try and root. I have one of my best friends is greedy. And we'll make a date and she'll say, look, why don't we go out and eat? And then she says, oh, so-and-so also wants to join us. Maybe we can go to, we can go out and eat, but afterwards we can go to this and that. It's like everything is attractive. And it's like nonstop. I mean, she's really greedy. And I am aversive. And so it's like, oh, I don't think I'll go out. I don't know. I sometimes, seriously, I wake up and I'm like, I just don't like anything. I don't like the world. I don't like people. I'm just not liking anything, so no, I don't want to go out, So that's the aversive, everything is unpleasant. And then the confused type is I don't know what's going on. What's happening? What is going on today? Where am I? What am I feeling? What am I supposed to be doing? I mean, we all have all three. That is just to say that these patterns of expression are patterns that we have been born with and that have been strengthened and awakened through this culture. And so it's really true to say we are swimming against the stream. I love that name, against the stream. We are swimming against the stream. The good news is that stronger than these energies are the beautiful energies. Stronger than hatred, confusion, and greed is love, mindfulness, faith, concentration, generosity, wisdom. And they can heal these energies, and they are healed by being seen through our mindfulness and loving kindness, and known, so that they get to be known so well that somehow the mind becomes less interested in supporting them. How do we begin to take the wood out of the fire that feeds the unwholesome energies? By challenging all the storylines we have in our head. If they don't have love, if they don't have caring in as an energy, then you know that we are in ignorance, that we're in defense. So I want to say that. I want to say that again, because in the vulnerability of feeling homeless, or not rooted in connection to nature and to life and the earth, whatever we have, we defend. Whatever little thing we have, we defend. And wherever we have felt hurt upon this not belonging, we defend. So I want to say that because sometimes we expect ourselves to just like come to a retreat and suddenly we're open, or come for 5 years and suddenly we're open. You know? No, these are deep, deep energies. And over time, it's like those big farm, you know, when they're building roads, they have those big machines with the kind of claws, you know, and the claws have their grip. And over time, those claws begin to open. And we are not gripped as often and as deeply. And that's where the aperture begins to open. Because over and over again, and there's a great teacher called U Tejaniya, and he led a retreat, and there were a lot of teachers at this retreat, and he, you know, he said, if you're really paying attention to each moment of your experience, you will see greed and wanting in every moment of experience. Just sometimes in the most subtlest of form. And I love that. I love normalizing our experience, yes. And what's so great about it is that the way mindfulness works is that every time it knows that greed or wanting or craving, a little bit of its strength is diminished. And every time mindfulness sees our beauty, sees our love and our wisdom and our effort and our joy, every time we acknowledge those energies, they get stronger. That's how mindfulness works. It's amazing, isn't it? It's like it has that capacity both ways. And that's why mindfulness is so central and the leader of our liberation. That it's said that for any of the beautiful factors to come into being, it's faith and mindfulness that are the forerunners. So we are creating the conditions over and over again by being mindful to bring all the other beautiful energies into being. And the more that we do, the stronger we are to hold and to challenge the forces that close the aperture. And when the aperture is closed, one of the worst consequences is that we stop seeing we are beautiful. Not because we're doing it, that's just what happens when ignorance and those energies are obstructing our heart and mind. They close the aperture. And so when we feel that, like, I cannot feel my beauty, we know it's not true. We know it's just that those energies are in the mind closing the aperture. It's just like 1 and 1 are 2. That is just the nature of those energies. And it's not even our fault. It's that we were born with them and live in a culture that supported and awakened them. So when we normalize it and say, yeah, of course, do I feel shame? Yes, I feel shame. Does it totally suck? Yes, it's the worst. But it's not mine. It is shame shaming. Like craving. And why is craving? Of course it's craving. When I feel rootless or whatever, disconnected, then the craving really comes up strongly. Or that's not me so much. I'm more in aversion, like, no, I'm shutting my door. I'm not interested in anything in the world at all. That's how it is. And so it's like, that's so brilliant, because in a way it really does free us from self-judgment, self-blame and shame. Because we're saying, this is how the nature of a human being works, and I want to learn that so that I can orient this flow of nature towards the opening of the aperture. That's it. And know the forces that close it. It's a natural exploration. So, well, I didn't, I haven't quite finished my Dharma talk, but maybe that is, that's almost good enough. Wait, a couple more. I want to lift up. I want to lift up what I said before, because I found it, and maybe there's some other things that you found that have been very helpful. If you, or we, I should say, if we have a thought more than 3 times, it's not true. It means that it has a particular charge to it that is repeating itself, either attachment or aversion. Just like, here's some tips for recognizing when the aperture is closing. And Christina Feldman taught me this, an English teacher. If you have a thought more than 3 times, check it out for yourself. See if that thought means that, because if in some way it's closing your aperture, or an expression of a constriction. Because when the thought is a creative thought associated to the here and now and present, there's something always new about it. right? It's like, even if it's like, oh, I have to buy bananas, how I'm thinking about it, I'm acknowledging my fruit bowl is empty of bananas. It's like it's related. And I don't ever have to repeat it when I'm in the toilet or anywhere else. But if I am repeating something, then I'm building a camera with a closed aperture. And I have plenty of those thoughts that I can say. The nice thing about being 73 is that I recognize them so well now. I'm like, okay, not true. You're not true. I can drop you. I mean, of course, sometimes I have to like really work at it. If it's like a very old trauma, then I have to work at it. But I know, at least I know it's not true. So that is a great help. And then the other one that I just said, if there's no love, then, or caring associated, or faith, or any of the beautiful qualities or generosity associated with the thought, then you know it's not supporting your aperture of opening. Lastly, the most available change-making energy we have is the understanding of karma. And that is, every intention is a seed that will flower. Every intention. So even when we're most lost and we feel so far away from any sense of well-being, if we can remember karma, we can remember to say, I can't work this now, or I can't discern this now, but may I in the future. And you've already changed the stream of consciousness. I can't figure out this, but may I in the future. I can't love myself now, but may I. I'm extricated I'm fully entangled with shame. May I extricate myself when I can. And the aperture opens a tiny bit through that. So every intention is a seed that at some point or another will come to fruition. And the more we plant the same seed over and over again, the greater the force of that fruition. In that sense, we are never without a source of empowerment. Never. Never, never, never. Okay. I'm going to end with one of my favorite poems. Also from Joy Harjo. This is called For Calling the Spirit Back from Wandering the Earth in Its Human Feet. Put down that bag of potato chips, that white bread, that bottle of pop. Turn off the cell phone, computer, and remote control. Open the door, then close it behind you. Take a breath, offered by friendly winds. They travel the earth, gathering essences of plants to clean. Give it back with gratitude. If you sing, it will give your spirit lift to fly to the stars' ears and back. Acknowledge this earth who has cared for you since you were a dream, planting itself precisely within your parents' desire. Let your moccasin feet take you to the encampment of the guardians who have known you before time. who will be there after time. They sit before the fire that has been there without time. Let the earth stabilize your post-colonial insecure jitters. Be respectful of the small insects, birds, and animal people who accompany you. Ask their forgiveness for the harm we humans have brought down upon them. Don't worry. The heart knows the way through, though there might be high-rises, interstates, checkpoints, armed soldiers, massacres, wars, and those who will despise you because they despise themselves. The journey might take you a few hours, a day, a year, a few years, 100,000 or even more. Watch your mind. Without training, it might run away and leave your heart for the immense human feast set by the thieves of time. Do not hold regrets. When you find your way to the circle, to the fire kept burning by the keepers of your soul, you will be welcomed. You must clean yourself with cedar, sage, or other healing plants. Cut the ties you have to failure and shame. Let go the pain you are holding in your mind, your shoulders, your heart, all the way to your feet. Let go the pain of your ancestors to make way for those who are heading in our direction. Ask for forgiveness. Call upon the help of those who love you. These helpers take many forms: animal, element, bird, angel, saint, stone, or ancestor. Call your spirit back. It may be caught in the corners and creases of shame, judgment, and human abuse. You must call in a way that your spirit will want to return. Speak to it as you would to a beloved child. Welcome your spirit back from its wanderings. It may return in pieces, in tatters. Gather them together. They will be happy to be found after being lost for so long. Your spirit will need to sleep after a while, and after it's bathed and given clean clothes. Now you can have a party. Invite everyone you know who loves and supports you. Keep room for those who have no place else to go. Make a giveaway, and remember, keep the speeches short. Then you must do this. Help the next person find their way through the dark. Thank you for your blessings this evening. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your presence and your listening.